Hello everyone, welcome to this video. In the previous video we have studied about adjoint operator. In this video we shall be seeing one important property for adjoint operator, namely the compactness of adjoint operator. So here in this theorem we have a linear operator defined from a space X from space Y, where X and Y both are normed spaces. They are equipped with some norm, and corresponding to these normed spaces we have x dash and y dash as the dual spaces of the spaces x and y. So on these dual spaces we are able to define the adjoint operator from the dual space of y to the dual space of x. So according to this theorem we say if T is a compact operator, if T is compact, then the corresponding adjoint operator T cross is also compact. So this is a very useful result. So let's see how we can prove this result. Now we have to prove here that this operator T cross, which is defined onto the dual spaces, that is a compact operator. So that means if we consider any subset B of this domain set y, domain space y dash, which is the dual space of y, then for this bounded subset of y dash, we show that the image under T cross B, is relatively compact. So this is according to the definition for compactness. This is what we are trying to prove here. So to prove, we will consider a bounded subset B. So we say that this subset is B. This subset B is bounded whenever we take some element G from here, and corresponding to this G we have the norm of G as less than equal to some positive number, then this subset B is bounded. So we have to prove the relative compactness of T cross B. So how can we prove that? We know according to the result that every totally bounded set on a complete space X is relatively compact, and moreover the dual space of a normed space is a Banach space, which is a complete normed space. Therefore we can say that because dual space is complete, in that case every totally bounded set is relatively compact. So that means if we are able to show that T cross B is totally bounded, then we can definitely say it has to be relatively compact. So in order to prove the total boundedness here, what do? We take some epsilon naught net and we prove that for any fixed epsilon naught greater than 0, the image T cross B, it has a finite epsilon naught net according to the definition for total boundedness. So this is what we wanted to prove here. Now because we are given T as a compact linear operator, the image TU, where what is U? U is some unit ball which is defined like this. Whenever we take some element from the space X, its norm is equal to 1. So that means all the points whose distance from origin is exactly equal to 1, that they lie on this ball, right? So that means all the points which are lying here on the boundary, they lie in U. So we say the image of this set U is relatively compact under T, because T is given to be a compact operator. If that is so, because it is relatively compact, it has to be totally bounded, because we know the dual space of a normed space is a Banach space, and this happens for a complete space X. That total boundedness implies relative compactness. In this case, because it is relatively compact, we say it is totally bounded. And moreover, because this set, the image T of U is totally bounded, then there is a finite epsilon 1 net. Now we are changing this epsilon here. Now we are calling this to be epsilon 1. So we say there is a finite epsilon 1 net, which we are calling by the name capital M. So this epsilon net would be contained in T of U for T of u, where what is epsilon 1? Epsilon 1 is nothing but epsilon naught divided by 4c. So you'll see in a moment how we have chosen this particular quantity. So we say T of u is totally bounded, then there is a finite epsilon 1 net which is contained in this set because it is totally bounded. That is according to the definition for total boundedness. So that means U, the set U, will contain some points x1, x2 up to xn such that each x satisfies the condition that the distance between the images of any 2 points, when we take the distance, has to be less than epsilon naught by 4c. Why? Because whenever you take any points in the epsilon net, suppose this is the point, this is the set U, then you have some finite number of points here. According to these finite points, we can create very small balls having radius epsilon 1 like this, which will cover whole of this set U, right? Such that no point is left behind. So in this case, we say the distance of any point x in U with that of each of these points which are lying in the epsilon net has to, when we take their images, has to be less than epsilon naught by 4c. This is according to the definition for epsilon net. Okay. Now we define another operator A, because the operator T that was defined from X to this normed space Y. Now we are defining another operator from the dual space of Y to the n-dimensional real space according to A of G. So we take the element from Y dash, which is nothing but some functional, say G. So after applying this operator A here, we would have G of T of x1, G of T of x2 and so on, because this is an n tuple. It has n entries, so the power n here, and the resultant of each functional that gives you a real number, right? It results in some real number. Therefore, the mapping is well defined. We are defining A from Y dash to the space Rn here. So according diagrammatically, you can see that if you have T defined from X to Y, the adjoint operator would be defined from Y dash to X dash, the dual spaces. And now we are defining another operator which is A from the space Y dash to the space Rn, such that in this case, if we suppose some set B which we considered as the bounded subset of Y dash, then T cross of B has to lie in X dash. So this is what we are saying here. Okay, after defining the set, now we say because G is bounded by the assumption star. So let's see our assumption. So this is our assumption. We have assumed in the very starting that B, which is a subset of Y dash, is bounded, and we have defined the norm accordingly. So using this assumption, we say that because G is bounded and T is bounded, because T is compact operator, it has to be bounded. Therefore, A is also compact. G is bounded and T is bounded. So let's have a look. We have defined our operator AG as G of T of x1, G of T of x2 and so on, G of T of xn, like that. So now, because we have these results which says if you have x and y as any normed spaces and T from x to y as a linear operator, then if T is bounded and dimension of T of x is less than infinity, that means T of x is some finite space, then the operator T has to be compact. So this is a result. And because here A is bounded, because both G and T are bounded, right? And the dimension of Rn, which is equal to n, is a finite number. Therefore, we can apply this result onto A, and we say that A is a compact operator. Now, because A is a compact operator and B is some bounded subset of Y dash, so therefore, according to the definition of compactness for compact operators, we say the set AB is relatively compact according to the definition. And moreover, because it is relatively compact, it has to be totally bounded according to the result that we have already studied for total boundedness, because we are saying B is relatively compact, then B has to be totally bounded, right? In this case, we are talking about AB, the operator A applied onto the set B. Now, because it is totally bounded, that means it will have a epsilon net which is finite. So we are calling that to be epsilon 2 net, just to differentiate, and which is finite in nature. So that means it will contain finite number of points. So let's call those finite points as AG1, AG2 up to AGN, where now we are defining epsilon 2 as epsilon naught by 4. Now you will see why we have chosen it to be like this. So in this case, because every G belongs to B satisfies the condition that the norm of AG minus AGK naught is less than equal to epsilon naught by 4 according to the definition for this finite epsilon net. So let's mark this as equation number 2, where this norm is defined on R of n. Then we say that we have to show that T cross G1 up to T cross Gm, that is the desired epsilon naught net for T cross B. Because once we have the finite epsilon naught net, we have the total boundedness for the operator T cross, and because we have the total boundedness for T cross is relatively compact, and because T cross is relatively compact, T cross B is relatively compact, that means the operator T has to be compact operator. So let's see how we proceed here by the definition for operator A and from equation 2. Using this result, and because we have defined AG like this here, G of T of x1, G of T of x2 up to G of T of xn, therefore we see that for every J and for every G belonging to B, there is some K such that whenever we take G of T of xj minus Gk of T of xj modulus square, this is less than equal to summation j varying from 1 to n G of T of xj minus Gk of T of xj. Why? Because you can obviously write A as less than equal to A plus B plus C plus so on, right? Say F. So in this case also we are saying the one member here is obviously less than equal to this sum. And according to the definition of A, what is this sum? If you see, you have defined your AG to be like this, some G of T of xj, and in a similar manner A of G of k is defined like this. So according to the definition of A, this quantity reduces to this one, and because we are applying the equation 2 here, the norm of Ag minus Agk is less than equal to epsilon naught by 4. So we have the quantity here as equal to less than epsilon naught by 4 whole square, right? So let's mark this result as equation number 3. Now, because we considered x as some arbitrary member of this unit disk U, unit ball U, then we say for every j, and there is a j for which equation 1 holds. So what was our equation 1? Let's have a look here. I think I forgot to mark equation 1. I think that is equation star. Yes. So we say then there is a j for which equation 1 holds. Now because G belonging to B is arbitrary, then there is a K such that equation 2 holds and equation 3 holds for that K and every J. Okay, finally I found my equation 1. So here you can see this is our equation 1. Norm of Tx minus Txj is less than epsilon naught by 4c for some j. Now we are saying this thing holds because u was some arbitrary member of u. So this thing holds whenever you change your j also. So from equation 1, this result holds for every j. From equation 2, we say the results hold for every k, because in this case also G belonging to B is also some arbitrary member. So whenever we change this, we have another value of k. So this results hold for every G here. So therefore, all in all, equation 3 holds for every J and every k, right? So this is what we say here. If that is so, what is the norm, what is the modulus of G of Tx minus Gk of Tx? So here what we can do, we can just add these terms, right? We can add subtract these terms and we can add subtract these terms over here. So once we do that, we can separate out the modulus values, because you know the mod of a plus b is less than equal to the mod of a plus the mod of b. So using this property here, we have written this to be less than equal to mod of g of t of x minus g of t of xj plus the mod of g of t xj minus gk t xj plus the mod of gk t xj minus gk t x. Now from this first expression, we can write this to be, because you have the mod of g of some x, right, some t of x. So you can write this to be less than the norm of g into the norm of t of x, something like that, right? So therefore this first term here reduces to this one. The second term according to equation number 3, because that holds for every j and k is less than epsilon naught by 4. So we can substitute the value here less than epsilon naught by 4, and same thing will apply onto this particular portion. We can take gk common, so you'll have the norm of gk multiplied by the norm of txj minus tx. Now from equation star, you know, we have considered and defined the functional g in such a manner that its norm is less than equal to c, right? And according to equation 1, this thing is less than equal to epsilon naught by 4c. So now you see why we have chosen this to be epsilon naught by 4c here. This thing is as such, this thing is c, and this thing is again epsilon naught by 4. So when you add up all this after calculation, you have epsilon naught. So basically we started from here, this portion, and we end up that this thing is less than epsilon naught, right? So we say, so this happens, right? And because this thing holds for every element x belonging to u, so according to the definition of t cross, we have defined g of tx is equal to t cross of g. So accordingly, this thing here could be written now as equal to t cross g, and this thing here could be written as t cross gk, right? So if we consider the norm of t cross g minus t cross gk, this would be equal to taking the norm of t cross g minus gk, and according to the definition for norm, it could be written as taking the supremum over all such terms such that norm of x is equal to 1, right? So here we can apply the definition for t cross g and t cross gk. So when you apply that, so you'll have g of t of x and g of tk of xk. Now because for every member it is less than epsilon naught, so its supremum also has to be less than epsilon naught. So that means we are saying the norm here is less than epsilon naught in this case. If that is so, we say we have found our so-called epsilon naught net for the adjoint operator t cross, right? So we say, because in the very starting epsilon naught was some arbitrary member, positive arbitrary number, therefore this set t cross b, where b was bounded, T cross B is totally bounded because it has some finite epsilon naught net, which is defined like T cross G1, T cross G2 up to T cross Gn. And because of the previous lemma and previous result, total boundedness in this case implies relative compactness because this is defined on complete normed space, which is the dual space in this case. So therefore, finally we say that the set, because the set B was assumed to be bounded subset of Y dash, this proves the compactness of T cross because we have proved that T cross B of some bounded set B is relatively compact. So this is the result about the compactness for the adjoint operator. So whenever we have some compact operator from a space X to the space Y, the corresponding adjoint operator from the dual spaces is also compact. So I hope you understood this theorem well. Well, that is it for this video. Thank you for watching.